guys, welcome to the forecast. Okay, this is the first episode of our podcast, Forerunner Journal's podcast. We're just kind of going to go through who we are first. I'm Sam, the host. Who are you?
Max.
Cool. And who are you?
I'm Ben.
Cool. So I thought it would be great to start with just who we are, what Forerunner does, and then we'll jump into the categories and what we're going to talk about today. So if you guys want to jump off with the history of Forerunner and how we got to today.
Yeah, so Forerunner started like with me, Ben, and Charlie.
Alex, dude.
And Alex. Well, there you go.
He's not here, it's fine.
Yeah. And basically, yeah, we were just all fans of video games, and we had this idea of starting a website / magazine, which kind of talks about the people and places behind them rather than the games themselves.
Cool.
And yeah,
It's kind of like we like the idea of doing storytelling.
yeah,
So, because obviously we've all grown up with, as you know yourself, like IGN and all the kind of like usual websites, and we kind of felt like it was a nice idea to just do quite like photograph heavy kind of stories that weren't necessarily to do with the games themselves, but maybe creative processes or like people behind them.
Yeah, it's all about making it more personal, just having a human angle. That was like one of the cornerstones. I think.
And with like the pipe dream was to put it in print, because photographs and everything, it all looks better on paper.
It has a tangible kind of tactile feel in it.
And if you guys haven't read the Forerunner Journal, there's issue 1 just there. Thoroughly worth the asking price. And
It's not bad.
I'd say pick one up. Yeah. And then I came on a bit later on. I'm still quite new, but we have formed a tight-knit group, and here we are. So yeah, it's cool. So basically, the forecast, we're just going to be as personable, and we're just going to talk freely about stuff. Quite loose categories, and then the idea is to have it as be community focused as possible. So in the future, we're going to be expecting input from you guys, just subjects and all that sort of thing. I wanted to kick off by just kind of saying what have we been playing and thoughts. So yeah, Max, do you want to say what you've been?
Yeah, could I just add something as well? Like,
please do.
This is our first podcast, so there's bound to be some learning hurdles along the way.
Learning hurdles, yeah.
Thank God you said it.
Yeah, so bear with us if any parts, But yeah, let's
What have you been
keep
playing,
going. Yeah, so recently I've been playing Deus Ex, Mankind Divided. Actually, me and Ben have been playing.
No,
it.
I just started it.
But yeah, I guess that would be an apt one to start with.
Yeah.
What are your initial thoughts about the game, Ben?
I've only done the kind of first tutorial. Well, you don't know the series at all.
I played the original one on the PC. Like what?
Oh right, okay. So you
time
actually
ago now.
right.
So it's still the same guy.
Yeah, it's still
It's actually not.
It's not.
Yeah, it's all about Adam Jensen. I think the original was about JC Denton. I might be getting that wrong, but I think they are different. And also
JC Denton does sound like he should be in a new metal band or something like that.
I think the first one was set in like 2077 or something like that.
Yeah,
and
okay.
These ones are prequels to that.
Oh.
They're a lot earlier.
So they're what are they, the synth people or whatever they're called? But how it got that bad?
Yeah, it's all about the kind of divide between augments and naturals, as they call it.
Yeah.
So this is set 5 years after the Human Revolution, the first game.
It basically, it's released 5 years after it as well, isn't it?
Yeah, funny enough.
It kind of like it's a prequel to. They're both prequels to the original that you played, right? Yeah. Okay. Basically, I went into it wanting more of Human Revolution, and almost in the brief time I've spent with it, that's too much of what I've got. If you know what I mean? It kind of, I felt like it feels like a 5-year-old game in a lot of respects.
Oh, really? Okay.
I'm not that fussed by that. I don't mind, but I mean, if you really get annoyed by just absolutely bad like voice acting and facial expressions and stuff, and like some of the NPC movements and stuff are rubbish, but so far it's really good. It's
Well, I think that echoes what some of the reviewers have been saying. They're latching onto the bad facial animation and some of the kind of creaky old.
It kind of reminds me of like because these days you can't. Naughty Dog exists and you can't escape that.
You can't ignore
and
that.
I wish I could ignore that,
Yeah.
but I can't. It kind of resurfaces some of the feelings I used to get when you used to play N64 games like Ocarina of Time, where you're in like the village and they're not moving their legs, but all the NPCs are kind of revolving around. It just feels like it's. I don't even know if you'd class it as that uncanny valley, but it's awkward.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. And we were actually saying when we were walking on the way over here, the idea that with Uncharted 4, because of that being the state of, where computer games are now, that's a pretty good, line in the sand. That I've been going back and playing lots of PS3 games recently, and Mass Effect 2, it's a very interesting thing about this industry is just how quickly that line in the sand does move.
Yeah.
And so Mass Effect 2, I remember that with incredibly rose-tinted glasses, but going back to play it now, it can be difficult. And those classic games that are considered, that's a game of a generation. Most people would say Mass Effect 2.
Yeah.
How that changes and how that evolves.
But I mean, going back to Deus Ex for a minute, I feel like one of the reasons I was able to overlook some of the uncanny valley and perhaps awkward facial animation, things like that, is that I feel the game's so deep in other areas. Specifically like the level design and how there's just so many options available to you at any one time, and Human Revolution was really good at that as well, but I feel like this game has taken it a step further.
Sure.
It really is the level design that sings to me about at the moment. I know I've heard complaints about the plot of the game and things like that, but just the way the studio has been able to kind of make your abilities or at least use your abilities in different ways to kind of tackle each like level and each mission level design. Like there's a new ability called what's the dash one called?
Icarus Dash.
Yeah, the Icarus Dash, where you can kind of leap up to platforms, or it just adds a new layer of like verticality to the level design, which I don't know.
For anyone who hasn't played Deus Ex, though, I guess we should say like briefly, it's kind of. Oh, have we done that? Have we done that a little bit?
Yeah.
Well, it's kind of because you mentioned.
RPG, would you say?
Yeah, because you mentioned Mass Effect 2, right?
Yeah.
And I really do feel like you'd appreciate these games. They're kind of that. They're more dystopian, but it's that sci-fi, and even like there's dialogue trees and stuff like that. It's like the main, like Max is saying. So I haven't played it enough to get to that point where I go, sorry, I don't care about bad AI or anything like that. But I remember with the original one at the time, that felt dated anyway. And you get to a point where you're like, these levels are so rich, and like even the environmental detail in terms of like, it's kind of like telling you the story through the environments and things like that, and kind of hinting to things rather than just.
And that's another thing I think it's really good at is the world building so far. People may have qualms about the storytelling itself, but the actual world itself is so detailed. Like I remember when I started playing, you walk down the street and to the right of you there's a shop called Vincent Van Gogh, and I thought that was pretty funny. Like there's just all these clever details, and the amount of looking at the naturals and the orcs walk down the street and them being discriminated against versus the naturals, and there's like a separate line for walking into the tube station for the orcs versus the naturals, and it's just stuff like that which really makes you feel immersed and feels like a believable. And to be honest, like one of the things that's cool about Deus Ex is that you could see that as a possible future. Like it's not so far-fetched as something like your Mass Effect, or so far into the future that you can't relate to it.
And I think that speaks of how far kind of storytelling in games has come, because I'm always slightly hesitant when these kind of, they can be quite on the nose analogies, be it as you're talking about racial discrimination or whatever it is, but you think that they actually pull that off. It's not bludgeoning you.
No, not at all.
They do force it. There is that opening bit at the train station where they're trying to just. They are forcing on you slightly.
I'm not like so far into the game. I've played it for maybe about 10 hours max. Cool. So I can't comment on all of it, but this is just so far.
Cool. Okay.
It's more of what you would have liked from Human Revolution.
Yeah. Kind of thing, I think if you liked Human Revolution, I could probably safely say you'll like this one.
Yeah.
You might just wish that it had evolved a bit more, perhaps. since that game, considering
That's
it's been
apt, isn't
5
it?
years.
That's
Oh
apt.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we're not even trying to review these games really. But,
I know, we're
I mean,
going
that sounds
straight
pretty.
in. I just want you to
sounds
play
like
it. Yeah, get it. Yeah.
Yeah.
But,
So if you do like action RPGs, I guess what we're
yeah.
saying is.
Yeah.
I like how we set it up. Like the first thing we were like, yeah, we kind of want to get away from reviews. Like the first thing we do is just go into a detailed.
Yeah.
And we should say, I mean, we've started this. These guys have started it as fans, and you know,
exactly.
Yeah, that is that's the main idea. I think. Like this is a bedroom of Alex's house where we are, like as professional as everything looks.
Yeah, in a
But
couple of episodes we'll show you the rest of
Yeah,
the room that
we
isn't
should.
painted black, but
the whole idea is like even behind the magazine is the whole trip and everything was just for fans. That's why,
Exactly.
for instance, it was a really small detail, but in most of the photos and stuff for the articles, we wanted us to be in them, which it doesn't sound like something you would pick up on.
Yeah.
But for us, it was kind of like, no, we're there talking to these people because we're just fans. We're not. None of us are like journalists.
And it just ties
we don't know
into
what
that.
we're doing, you know. But
It just ties into that whole personal angle as well, you know. If
Yeah,
we're
exactly.
talking
Yeah,
about people,
yeah.
we're going to show us as well.
yeah,
and
exactly.
hence the community aspect and trying to get other people on board is just
Definitely.
we're interested to just to start a conversation, discussion really.
And I guess like the podcast is also it's fun, but also it's a way to kind of we want to keep everything updated and show like talk about maybe things we're doing. And while this is obviously an excruciatingly awkward first experience.
Yeah, but I mean, just put a face to the magazine. You know?
Yeah.
Faces.
Yeah.
There you
Thank
go.
you.
So.
I mean, back to games.
That's
What
about us.
have you been playing?
Oh well, I know you've been playing a lot of Downwell.
Okay.
And Downwell is one of those games that I must have read about it on a blog or something. Can't even remember where I heard about it, but it magically appeared on my iPhone. Like with all good
You're
iPhone
quite
games.
like that, aren't you? Do you go like you're quite? Maybe I'm wrong, but you go on like Steam and you play games you wouldn't otherwise like. Is that you?
How so? No, what do you mean? Yeah.
Well, don't you download games you might not otherwise have like considered or heard of?
I've certainly tried to.
You try, yeah.
Just to broaden
I
my
remember you
horizons,
saying that
really.
before. No, okay, because this just sounds like an extension of that.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, my
Always good,
background,
yeah.
lots of. Oh, sorry, go on.
No. Well, I was
Too
just
busy
gonna say,
talking
it's
about
always-
myself, Max.
It's always good to be open to new experiences. So,
Well,
yeah. That's what I was going to say.
Well,
Thank you.
and computer games, yeah. No, but yeah, no. So Downwell, it's an incredible. Actually, I should have researched. It was just basically almost a one-man project,
Right.
and it's one of those things where I mean, kind of some people can really turn their noses up at 8-bit aesthetics and kind of very simple. The carrot on the stick. It's a very quick cycle of gameplay. But when it does it as well as Downwell does, it's hard not to really respect it. And the graphics on Downwell, they're literally just white and red on a black background.
Oh, wow, okay.
But then you realise with Downwell that the dangerous things are red.
Right.
And
What is
so-
it? What is
it's
it? What
very
is the
So
premise of
Downwell
this game?
literally is a dude. He's got gun boots. So you shoot
I think
with
I
your
know
feet.
this. Yeah.
And
yeah.
you fall down a well, and it's got maybe 15 levels, and then there's a boss at the
I
end.
do know about this. Yeah.
Still haven't killed the boss, but
Really?
Max and I were talking about trophies the other day, PlayStation trophies, and just I care when I care, but it really I need that hook.
Yeah.
And when it has that, I mean, you can die in 10 seconds sort of thing if you're playing
Yeah.
really poorly. But it's nice to kind of that one more go mentality.
Yeah.
Sure.
100%.
Yeah.
And I just recommend Downwell to anyone really. As Ben was saying, like I try and play all sorts of different types of games.
It kind of is it like that kind of like trial and error hook, like a Hotline Miami kind of
Yeah,
addictive?
you got
It's
it.
a very
Yeah,
arcade
yeah.
style.
Yeah,
game,
very much so.
Yeah.
And I'm just playing that on my Vita. I really want us to big the Vita up as much as we can.
Yeah,
over the course of this,
the
but,
poor Vita, yeah.
yeah, man. It's hard to see how that thing's been treated.
Yeah.
But I'm not like that in general. I try to play games that sounds like reading. Like I try to read as much as possible. I try to play games that's free, like because obviously the older you get, the less time you have to play them. But I've never been. The amount of indie games and smaller games I've played is quite minimal.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Inside is definitely. I know you don't want to talk about it just yet, but
We might do an inside special, but we all just need to
Yeah.
get around to actually playing it first. So
I've played it, by the way.
this guy, yeah. Well,
yeah,
no, the first 20 minutes is great, but
because like before Deus Ex, I know you want to talk about, but Uncharted 4,
Yeah.
and then a lot of Overwatch, which I've kind of stopped playing at the moment. But
yeah. You stopped playing Overwatch at the moment?
yeah, kind of. I don't know.
Fizzled out a bit, did it? Or you
So,
just...
I think so. I don't know. Things got in the way. the thing is, if Alex isn't online, I'm not going to play on my own. He plays online games. Pretty much, Alex plays online games religiously. He's the only one who does that out of all of us.
And the last online game I played, I think, was Halo Reach. So we've got
a good one.
It's
a good one. Yeah, it's
yeah.
a good one.
Yeah.
But Alex, so if he's not on, I'm not going to play it. So I don't want to say it's down to the game's faults that I don't play anymore.
No. Yeah.
I think he went on holiday, so that's probably.
I think Overwatch has seen enough success so far for most people to know it's.
Well, Alex is hooked on Battlefield 1. Have you played Battlefield? Have either of you?
No, I know that the beta exists and people are riding horses, but apart from
I haven't jumped on yet.
At some point in the future, I don't think we've read up enough on it just yet, but the idea of ethics in computer games as well is a very interesting subject to us. And just tackling World War I at all is something that we will talk about when we've got a bit more time, I think. But yeah, so we can heartily recommend. Did you actually say you played Battlefield 1?
No, I didn't, but I did want to say Battlefield 1 is one of the games where we did want to do some kind of story down the line, didn't we? That's all right to talk about, isn't it? Yeah. Well, just because I really wanted to do, because so we've got some kind of contact with DICE, don't we?
Yeah.
I really like the idea of doing a story on the fact checkers.
Yeah.
So because so my dad doesn't play games at all. Well, he used to. He only played like World War II games, so Medal of Honor and stuff like that.
When did he get out?
He kind of with dual analog. He kind of gave up because it was confusing for most people.
Really? Yeah.
Yeah. But I showed him the trailer for it, and obviously they've like it's insane, and like the amount of detail in there, all I can imagine is they've got this whole team that has to do the amount of research behind it to make it that authentic. And I just surely there must be someone you could talk to where maybe you get to see the kind of research they had to do and do a story behind that. Just because I know it is slightly blockbuster, but it does look really true to
Well, and just the notion of
angle. No, I was just saying it's an interesting angle for sure.
Yeah. Well, just the notion of playing Assassin's Creed games for as long as we have as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And the actual idea, like you're saying, that how ludicrous it would have been even say 15 years ago that games do have fact checkers.
Imagine, when you used to make games, you just be like, oh, fuck it, it's in space. Who cares? I don't need to check facts. Who cares? And now because earlier we were talking about graphic fidelity and stuff like that, and now it's like you've got to do your research, otherwise you're going to have a lot of unhappy people.
And that's actually a pretty good way of sliding straight into Uncharted 4, which I just want to talk about forever. But the idea that, very few games in the times I've been playing games for 20 years have actually encouraged me to Google something afterwards and go, wow, that is a real thing.
Yeah.
Reading about Henry Avery and Libertalia and all of that sort of stuff. That was something that my dad, talking about dads all the time, but my dad, who's a bit of a history buff, he didn't really know about Libertalia or Libertatia or whatever it's been called in these interesting books over the years. But going back to the Assassin's Creed thing, the idea that, they say of a group of multicultural and people from different faiths and creeds or whatever you will. And just the fact we got to that point that, even when I was at university, I used running around on the Colosseum as in one of our seminars, just to kind of show the idea that even in Renaissance Rome, the Colosseum was already buggered, already, and just that sort of attention to detail. That's probably why we're playing games today.
Well, I when I went to Florence, I used Assassin's Creed 2 as my point, which is super sad. I did use it as my point of reference. Not, obviously it's not completely accurate, but I knew all the landmarks because of that game.
But but specifically about Uncharted 4, what was it that kind of, because you said you could talk about it forever.
Oh yeah.
So
certainly try.
Max basically wants you to start it so that he can gush.
Well, this will be gushing, and I think Ben said he's willing to play devil's advocate. So
happily.
So I think we just established that The Last of Us is my second favourite game of all time. So, but just the evolution from Uncharted 3 to The Last of Us just made so much sense, and kind of the way that they were evolving the story. Like Amy Hennig's, the way that she made the first 3 Uncharted games. Is just really laudable, one incredible series. And how many fourth things in any series are good? Be it films, be it whatever.
That's a good point.
Just from a story perspective more than anything, but just how nuanced it all is. And I was saying to my girlfriend earlier, what really really caught my attention was in anything I've played or experienced before, you know, for them to just inject such a pivotal, important character as the main character's brother into the story, you know, 4 or 5 games in of your, including the Vita one.
Yeah.
It felt natural that Sam Drake was there because of how much it affected everybody else. Like Elena, you know, all these characters that have been there since day one. How her heart's breaking because of this character. You know, if he was just separate, I don't think it would have nearly as much impact.
You needed Nathan Drake needed that emotional element.
Well, no, I was gonna say, I think in all the Uncharted games, the characters are there to pull on different sides of Nathan and show different sides of his character.
Sure.
So his brother was there, for a very specific reason in this, and that was to, you know, show that he had grown out of, you know, this kind of treasure hunter mentality, and he was kind of looking to move past that.
Yeah.
And it's kind of that fight against that, I guess.
Well, you're exactly right. And I mean, when Uncharted 3 wrapped up and, you know, they're walking into the sunset like at the end of The Last Crusade sort of thing, like, I never sat there and thought, oh man, what am I missing from their relationship or blah, blah, blah. But the fact that they're just sitting there doing something that people don't do in computer games, talking about who's going to make dinner and who's going to do the washing up.
So true,
the most domestic thing. I mean, by now everybody knows about the Crash Bandicoot thing. But just how simple that is, you know? Yeah. Just the idea that I'll play you for this. I don't want to do the washing up, blah, blah, blah. And it just made you care about those characters in a way. I mean, that's like friends.
Naughty Dog, I know it's always storytelling, but it's human relationships, isn't it, basically? And that those smaller moments are what usually, you know, make a proper relationship.
Yeah, and it's those smaller moments that you can see the influence from The Last of Us strongly, I think. And
Uncharted 4, that's the thing. So, devil's advocate, right? The thing I kind of felt was like they were trying to, I mean, not unsuccessfully, but they were trying to, you know, bring out these emotional elements in the Uncharted series.
Yeah.
But the nature of Uncharted is so less grounded as a gameplay experience, you know, and what you're doing, that the resonance of like, you know, the actual personal relationships and stuff, it just kind of, there was like a slight dissonance for me.
That's
okay,
fair.
Yeah. And we've all finished it.
Yeah.
I guess we can talk about spoilers if everybody's happy with that.
Great.
But
you had your chance.
It's been out a month sort of thing. But I mean, even just the nature of, you know, when it pulls back, the epilogue, spoilers as we say. But you know, you just meet this girl and she doesn't have a name, and then you find out she's called Cassie. And if you've been paying attention, that's Drake and Sam's mum's name. You know, and just the idea that, holy shit, you know, the last thing I want is for this to kind of do the. I assume it will break off into a new series, say in 10 or 15 years' time, and then it'll be Cassandra Drake or whatever. But just the idea of legacy has always popped up in the Uncharted games, and as you're saying about maybe the emotion, it doesn't. Do you think it doesn't feel earned, maybe, or?
No, I mean, like the cutscenes and everything, like everything felt natural. I will say that, I felt like the entrance of Sam was kind of from nowhere. I mean, they do tie it in very well. Like, don't get me wrong, but it's convenient.
Would you say it exists better on its own as a standalone game rather than being tied to the other 3 games?
Yeah, 100%.
Because I agree with that and I disagree with that, because I think you gain so much more from having played the 3 games. Like when you're in the attic at the beginning of the game and you're going through all like you know, the artifacts he's found on his adventures. Like that would mean nothing to you if you hadn't played the other games. And the character relationships, again, you wouldn't have an attachment to any of the characters. So I see what you're saying, but I think there's kind of 2 sides to it.
Don't get me wrong, like the game was great, but it's for me it's nothing on something like The Last of Us. And to be honest, other than that kind of the new narrative elements and stuff, it didn't do that much different from the original 3 for me.
Sure.
And I mean, the graphics were obviously ridiculously stunning, but then when you present a game that clean and that crisp, when you're doing things like, I just found it so annoying. I know I'm such a nitpick, but when you're sliding down, you do a lot of sliding in this game.
But sliding's all over it.
But you can kind of curve back up it. Like
I almost thought the game was broken. That was the one thing where I was sliding sideways.
And you kind of. And equally, like, he defies gravity when he's swinging, which is again a fun mechanic, and I'm glad it's in there. I'm not being pain in the ass, but it is awkward when you're swinging and then it's kind of he's just staying at an angle. Obviously, I'm being a dick because I'm like, no, I'm going to see where he stays.
No, they're very lenient with that. I think one thing in these games is that they don't want you to get frustrated by dying a lot because it is all about the story, and I think that's an example of maybe them pushing it slightly too far.
So you can,
and to their credit, this might be the first Naughty Dog game where I've played where there hasn't been a bit where I've just, been banging my head against the wall.
Well, what's the bit in Last of Us where you bang your head?
The bit where the rats come downstairs and you've got to get the generator to go and there's a belcher down there. Like, holy shit. I was going back through my trophies about looking at what I could easily pick up on Uncharted 4. And looking at the Last of Us one. And, it had only pinged on easy. And I was like, well, that's not like me, blah, blah, blah. But I was so scared in that level where you're downstairs and it's dark, and at that point I just turned it to easy and then just sprinted because that belcher was killing me in the dark, and I've never been that scared in my life. Like, I don't like scary things, and so that was it.
Well, I'll tell you the bit I didn't like in Uncharted 4, probably because I was approaching it wrong, but the bit with all the bodies blowing up, and I didn't know how to not set them off.
It felt a bit too video gamey, didn't it?
Yeah, and it was
I think that bit, like, more than any other part, is a lot less nuanced. Like, one of the things that Uncharted 4 does really well compared to the other three is the combat scenarios, how it opens up and lets you tackle them in different ways.
I've got a gripe about those.
But that's we'll get onto that in a second. But I think with those mummies, that mummy bit, that's an example of you are forced down this path and it's for cinematic effect or whatever. But I can totally see why that would.
Was there a way not to set them off though?
No,
I don't think so. I think you can roll past them and obviously not blown up.
I got hurt, like every time.
I don't know. I don't know if you can come out of it completely clean. No, okay. But why didn't you go on about the combat?
The thing is, it's probably because of the way I approach the game, which is probably the issue with every gripe I've got. It's down to the way I approach it. But the kind of, it was like the actual layouts weren't like, maybe I'm just used to other kind of stealth games, but they felt too sandboxy for me. So if I did fuck up, or I always felt like, I mean, maybe that's just good AI, but I never felt like I was in control in those scenarios. And if I did fuck up once, then that was it. And I didn't want to have to feel, because the game is about momentum and it's cinematic, I don't want to start it again. But that's the nature of stealth games. And I do trial and error. Like Deus Ex, if I screwed up, I go straight back to. And I found myself in these positions where, I didn't feel in control. They're all around me constantly. That's
interesting you said that, because that's actually something I like about the combat, and it's the same reason I like the combat in The Last of Us as well. Because Last of Us has similar stealth kind of encounters where you'll start off stealthy, but a lot of the time someone will see you, and it will devolve into combat. But I like having to adapt on the fly. And kind of it dynamically changing between stealth and combat. And to Uncharted 4's credit, you can actually run away from them and get back into stealth this time.
Yeah, which you could never do before. Which I would do, but again.
And go on.
No, well, I was just going to say, but whereas in The Last of Us, I didn't really feel like. I mean, if I screwed up, I'd be like, screw it, I'll get my shotgun out and it's zombie types, whatever, and it works in that, but maybe I don't
Last resort shotgun is always a good tactic.
It worked way better than that,
just as a quick aside, we should probably move on from Uncharted 4 just in case you guys haven't played it, but when we're talking about stealth in games as well, I've been playing Volume recently, which is made by the dude who, the name escapes me, but he made Thomas Was Alone. Mike Bithell, I think he's called. Smart man from England, I think. And basically he has applied a level of artifice to the story in Volume. So it's basically, in case you don't know, Volume is it's like the refined version, of Metal Gear Solid. It does away with all of the story.
I know what you're talking about.
And it plugs it into this really interesting kind of dystopian, almost Big Brothery sort of story. And so instead of Silicon Valley, he's talking about Nottingham. In the near future becoming Silicon Glen. And so it's got this wonderful kind of almost Robin Hood in the internet sort of the main character, I think he's called Loxley, he's just trying to take back from the people. And the idea that, you were talking about with stealth and how frustrating it can be, the kind of trial, the rinse and repeat. But because Loxley is inside an AI, and he's inside a computer program, it makes total thematic sense that these guys would just reset. You know, in theory, the first time you get spotted in Metal Gear Solid or whatever game it is, they'd put the whole place on high alert and that'd be the whole game. And whilst that is very interesting, you know, I think it was Kojima, he once talked about the idea of if you died once in a game, he'd do it so the disc self-destructed or something, you know, like, and just how heavy that...
He would do that though.
Yeah. If someone gave him the option.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, the idea that it was actually a really smart way within Volume to actually justify these things just going back to their sub-routines, you know?